The first time Mr. Caldwell called me just the assistant, he did it in front of a supplier who was trying not to cry. The supplier's name was Ruth. She owned a small packaging company that had won a 2-year contract with our firm after months of evaluation. Her company employed 42 women, most of them from a settlement on the edge of the city where stable jobs were rare and promises from large companies were usually decorative. The contract had been signed. The first purchase order had been issued. Ruth had taken a bank facility to buy new cutting equipment because our volumes required it. Then Mr. Caldwell decided he wanted the contract moved to a different supplier. Not a better supplier. Not a cheaper supplier. A supplier owned by his golf partner. So there we were in the 10th floor boardroom, Ruth sitting with her notebook open and hands trembling, while 3 senior men explained why an agreement they had signed no longer suited their strategic direction. With respect, Ruth said, we invested based on your written commitment. The contract has a minimum purchase clause. Mr. Caldwell smiled like a man tolerating a child. That is not how big business works. I was standing near the wall with the minutes folder. Ruth looked at me. Not because she thought I could save her, but because I was the only other woman in the room. Mr. Caldwell noticed. Do not look at Nadia, he said. She is just the assistant. She schedules the meetings. We handle the decisions. Everyone laughed except Ruth and me. I wrote the sentence down exactly. That was my job. Minutes. People underestimate minutes. They think minutes are administrative dust, the boring residue left after important men finish speaking. But minutes are memory with a timestamp. They are the difference between I never said that and recorded at 11:42 a.m. under agenda item 3. I had been executive assistant to the board of Marwood Consumer Goods for 9 years. I arranged travel, prepared meeting packs, tracked approvals, and reminded directors of decisions they later pretended were spontaneous. I knew which director read documents and which only underlined the first page. I knew which lawyer warned carefully and which manager ignored warnings with expensive confidence. Most importantly, I knew where things were. The contract with Ruth's company, Brightline Packaging, had not appeared from nowhere. It had gone through procurement, finance, legal, sustainability review, and board approval. I had assembled the board pack myself. I remembered the discussion because the chair had praised the contract as part of our women-led supplier program. The marketing team had even prepared a press release about inclusive sourcing. Now the same men wanted Ruth to walk away quietly. Mr. Caldwell slid a document across the table. This is a mutual termination notice. Sign today, and we will consider reimbursing a portion of your setup costs. Refuse, and future work with this company becomes difficult. Ruth's lips parted. Are you threatening me? I am explaining commercial reality. The legal manager, Paul, looked down at his phone. He knew better. That made it worse. After the meeting, Ruth stood outside the lift wiping her eyes. I passed her a tissue. Do I have any chance? She asked. I should have said something safe. Assistants are trained in safe sentences. I cannot advise you. Please speak to legal counsel. The company will communicate formally. Instead, I said, read Clause 14 before signing anything. Her eyes sharpened. Clause 14. And the schedule on minimum volumes. That was all I said. Back at my desk, Mr. Caldwell called me into his office. You seemed very interested in Ruth today. I was taking minutes. Do not get sentimental. Small suppliers do not understand scale. The board approved the contract. He leaned back. The board approves what management recommends. Management can revise. Legal should review that. His expression cooled. Nadia, your value here is discretion. Do not confuse access with authority. There it was again. The assumption that because I did not raise my voice, I had no power. Men like Caldwell mistake silence for emptiness. They do not realize silence is often storage. That evening, I pulled the contract from the secure archive. I did not remove it. I did not leak it. I opened the board-approved version and checked the clauses. Clause 14 was stronger than I remembered. It said either party could terminate for convenience only after 6 months written notice and only after payment for committed minimum volumes during the notice period. More importantly, the supplier protection schedule stated that if Marwood terminated before the first 12 months without supplier breach, it would reimburse documented capital investment made specifically to fulfill the contract. Ruth had a case. But having a case and surviving a powerful company are different things. The next morning, Caldwell instructed me to prepare minutes stating that Brightline Packaging had agreed in principle to mutual contract separation. I looked at my notes. She did not agree. He glanced up. Use commercial language. The minutes need to reflect what happened. Nadia. He said my name like a warning. I prepared the minutes accurately. Ruth had been asked to consider termination. She had not accepted. Mr. Caldwell had stated that refusal may affect future work. Paul from legal had been present. The contract clauses were raised by the supplier. I circulated the draft to attendees as standard procedure. Within 6 minutes, Caldwell called. Remove the future work sentence. It was said. It is inflammatory. It is accurate. Change it. Please send the correction request by email. He hung up. That was when I knew he understood the danger of records too late. By Friday, Ruth had hired a lawyer. I knew because the legal department received a preservation notice requesting all meeting notes, contract drafts, board approvals, and internal communications relating to Brightline Packaging. The notice copied the chair of the board. Caldwell's office door closed for most of the afternoon. On Monday, an emergency board meeting was scheduled. I prepared the pack. This time, I added the original approval memo, the supplier protection schedule, the signed contract, the disputed minutes, and the email chain showing Caldwell's instruction to prepare a termination notice before any board discussion. Paul came to my desk at 7:45 a.m. Did you include all of this? It is relevant. He lowered his voice. Caldwell will be furious. Then the pack is accurate. He looked at me for a long moment and said nothing. The emergency meeting began at 9. I sat at the side table, laptop open, recording attendance and decisions. Ruth was not there. Her lawyer had submitted a letter instead. Caldwell opened with confidence. He said Brightline had failed to demonstrate capacity. He said management needed flexibility. He said the relationship had broken down. The chair, a woman named Dr. Elaine Foster, turned to Paul. Has Brightline breached the contract? Paul cleared his throat. No formal breach has been recorded. Has management issued a cure notice? No. Then on what basis are we terminating? Caldwell interrupted. Commercial fit. Dr. Foster opened the board pack. Clause 14 appears to make that expensive. The room went quiet. Caldwell looked at me. I kept typing. The finance director calculated the exposure while everyone waited. Minimum volumes, 6 months notice, capital reimbursement, possible legal fees, reputational risk, and breach of our public supplier inclusion commitment. The number landed on the table like a brick. Then Dr. Foster read the minutes from the previous meeting. Mr. Caldwell, did you tell the supplier that refusal may affect future work? He shifted. That was taken out of context. The context is in the minutes. He looked at me again. This time his face had changed. I was no longer just the assistant. I was the person who had written down the truth before he knew he needed a different one. The board voted to suspend termination discussions and open an internal review. Brightline's contract would proceed. Marwood would issue a written assurance to the supplier and reimburse documented financing costs caused by delayed onboarding. After the meeting, Caldwell walked past my desk without looking at me. 3 weeks later, he resigned. The official statement mentioned strategic differences. Internal gossip mentioned conflict of interest, procurement interference, and a golf partner whose packaging company had suddenly become less attractive. Ruth's first full delivery arrived a month later. I watched the pallets come in through the warehouse camera feed because I had helped schedule the inspection. The boxes were neat, labeled, and on time. Ruth sent an email to the board thanking Marwood for honoring the contract. She also sent me a separate message with only one sentence. Clause 14 saved us. I printed it and placed it inside my personal notebook. Later that year, Dr. Foster promoted me to board governance officer. It was the first title I had ever held that sounded like what I actually did. At the announcement, Paul from legal shook my hand. You always knew more than people realized, he said. No, I said. People realized less than they should have. That is the mistake powerful men often make with quiet women. They confuse volume with influence. They think the person pouring water, arranging chairs, and typing minutes is outside the room's real power. But every room has visible power and invisible power. Visible power speaks first. Invisible power remembers exactly what was said. Mr. Caldwell had laughed when he called me just the assistant. He did not understand that assistants live at the intersection of documents, calendars, decisions, and secrets. We know when a meeting was moved, who requested the change, which clause was ignored, and which version of the contract was signed before someone tried to rewrite history. I did not destroy him. His own words did that. I simply wrote them down.